Breaking. Britain has just been cut off from Israel. Not citizens, not tourists, but the whole government. At 9 p.m. Jerusalem time, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered a full diplomatic freeze, accusing London of betraying its allies and legitimizing terror. The trigger, Starmer's recognition of the State of Palestine. As Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognizes the State of Palestine, followed by his support for IC arrest warrants against Israeli officials. All intelligence frameworks worth £12.4 billion are now suspended, ending a 42-year alliance. 17 terror plots once stopped by Israeli intelligence, and now unseen. More than 2 million people watched live as a G7 minister's plane turned back over the Mediterranean. This isn't diplomacy. It's a rupture that could leave Britain blind and alone. 4 days before the rupture, Downing Street went dark. No vote, no warning, no witnesses. At 8:12 a.m., Starmer signed a one-page order recognizing the State of Palestine. Cleared by 3 advisors seen by no one else, the Foreign Secretary was never told. Hours later, another memo left his desk. Britain would back ICC arrest warrants for Israeli commanders accused of war crimes. No cabinet, no security review, just a signature and silence. Inside the Foreign Office, panic flickered. Ambassador Dame Barbara Woodward sent an encrypted query at 11:47 a.m. Jerusalem time. No reply. MI6 cancelled its noon briefing. One official called it policy by ghost. In Tel Aviv, Ambassador Simon Waters was summoned without orders, standing speechless before cameras. By noon, Israel had already acted, while London was still asleep. Britain's allies didn't question the decision. They questioned who made it, and for the first time in decades, the United Kingdom wasn't leading diplomacy, it was chasing it blind. At 9 p.m. Jerusalem time, the response arrived. Not as a statement, but as an order. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu convened his war cabinet and authorized a total intelligence freeze with the United Kingdom. No debate, no delay. Within minutes, secure data links between MSAD and MIT6 went silent. The £12 billion joint security framework that mapped militant networks across Europe was disabled. 17 ongoing threat operations vanished from British radar. Analysts at GCHQ characterized the blackout as a hole punched through the map. Connections through the firewall into the Israeli-coded energy grids and financial sector monitoring systems were shut off. A Home Office memo showed a 32% drop in counter-terror capacity in only 6 hours. Netanyahu took to the cameras. A nation which abandons its allies in their out of need, he said, should not expect protection in return. Markets in Tel Aviv applauded. London froze. The retaliation wasn't symbolic, it was surgical. Britain hadn't lost a friend. It had lost its shield. The numbers began to bleed the morning after the blackout. The defence sector in Britain lost £2.1 billion in contracts even before trading opened. Insurance firms were marking critical exposure across cyber, aviation and energy. By 9:07 a.m., the FTSE warning index flashed red, not for volatility this time, but for trust. Major Israeli tech investors pulled out from the London Stock Exchange listings within hours. Data firms at Canary Wharf called it a silent run. The servers went down, not from attack, from suspension. Tel Aviv data mirrors powering British banking algorithms were disconnected overnight, corrupting transaction logs. Inside the Bank of England, emergency calls echoed unanswered. Currency desks froze, swaps tied to Middle East energy futures. A senior analyst described the moment. We didn't lose money. We lost the map. By afternoon, the Treasury confirmed a 7% contraction in projected GDP growth and warned of systemic liquidity distortion. To economists, it was jargon. To markets, collapse. London had been the pulse of world finance for decades. Now the pulse was still, and every heartbeat cost £1 billion, while markets bled and diplomacy went quiet. Washington suspended all data exchanges under the Five Eyes Protocol. Paris withdrew from a joint cyber defense exercise. Warsaw froze its eastern flank intelligence sharing. In Brussels, Britain's chair at the EU security table sat empty by design. Across the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and the UAE issued a joint statement. Partnerships require loyalty. No nation named the UK. All knew whom was implied. Within NATO, documents previously stamped confidential UK eyes only were being reclassified to NATO general use. A quiet demotion on paper allowed message in practice. The State Department's morning brief defined it bluntly. Britain's diplomatic status pending review. For the first time since 1945, London was not invited to a Western security summit. No press release, no protest. Just absence. Allies didn't break ties. They turned away and left the UK talking to its own echo. At home, the shock turned inward. Cobra meetings ran without minutes. The National Security Advisor resigned at dawn. Yetta Cooper and John Healey stopped speaking to each other. Downing Street's corridors were slant, except for the buzz of burning phones. Leaked emails showed MI5 warning of a strategic vacuum. The Cabinet Office deleted 12 classified threads before journalists could see them. Treasury files flagged severe liquidity migration. Pollsters reported Labour support collapsing to 17%. In the same hour, Conservatives hit 52. Aides called it the Sears curve. At 11:40 p.m., an internal chat log captured one line. We built a foreign policy without a parachute. By morning, staff turnover passed 40%. Security clerks were hand-carrying red files to shredders. Even the Prime Minister's press secretary stopped briefing the press. Britain was no longer a government managing a crisis. It was a crisis managing a government. Abroad, Britain became a ghost signature on old treaties. The CIA rerouted Mediterranean data flows through Athens. Canada and Australia shifted defence liaison to Washington. Germany quietly cancelled its UK joint AI security project. Within NATO, a single line in the minutes told the story. Operational trust, inactive. It wasn't an expulsion, it was a freeze. The International Monetary Fund postponed a scheduled audit, citing unclear data integrity. Translation: no one believed British numbers anymore. In Tel Aviv, Israeli officials closed the last joint research hub. The sign was simple: temporarily suspended. No one believed it was temporary. By week's end, 19 security programs, once labelled UK-Israel Joint Operation, had been re-tagged US-Israel Control. The world's maps didn't change, but Britain's coordinates vanished. On the streets, anger found a voice. Tens of thousands marched from Whitehall to Parliament Square, chanting, "Not in our name." Police drones recorded crowd density peaking at 312,048 arrests, 9 injuries. Digital feeds exploded. Number Britain betrayed hit 19 million mentions in a day. Number signs stand with Israel trended second. Resigned armour first. Synagogues reinforced doors. Mosques open for dialogue. Supermarkets in Leeds and Manchester closed early after threat hoaxes. The Home Office classified them as civil friction events. For the public, the question was no longer foreign policy, as it was so energy prices spiked 14% overnight as Middle East contracts rose. Petrol queues stretched for miles. A shopkeeper in Birmingham told Sky News, "It's not about politics, it's about whether the lights stay on." By midnight, riot units lined Downing Street. Helicopters circled Westminster. The sound wasn't protest anymore. It was a heartbeat of fear. 2 weeks into the blackout, GCHQ flagged an anomaly. 17 servers handling classified traffic from the Mediterranean went offline simultaneously. Source unknown. Intercepts showed coordinated probes from Tehran, Beirut, and Damascus. 7,400 unauthorized access attempts in 48 hours. A record. No Israeli counter-data arrived. The screen stayed blank. MI5 cyber unit shifted to manual monitoring. The operators watched the threat grids like weather radar, patterns forming then disappearing. At RAF Wington, one analyst typed, "We don't see the storm anymore." Container ships in the eastern Mediterranean lost GPS for 6 minutes. Air traffic control in Cyprus reported phantom signals. Insurers called it an accident. GCHQ called it a test. By morning, the Home Office launched Project Blindspot, an internal protocol to map what Britain could no longer see. It failed before it started. In the absence of Israeli eyes, the UK stood alone in a digital war it couldn't fight or even find. Silence settled over Whitehall. Cabinet doors locked. Parliament prepared a vote of confidence. No cheers, just rain on the windows. In a final address, Keir Starmer spoke without notes. "History will judge us by our principles." Outside, the pound dropped another 1.7%. Inside, lights flickered. The Prime Minister left through the back gate of Downing Street. No motorcade, no escort, just silence and the sound of a nation shrinking in the rain. And Israeli officials summed it up to the press. Principles don't keep nations safe. The longest alliance in Britain's history ended not with gunfire, but with a password that no longer worked.